Okay, hello. Today's date is July 15th, 2016. This is Paul, and I have with me my friend Robert Nelson. We are doing the second in the series of Birthright recordings. This is going to be the second Birthright recording video. And this one is going to be about Jesus' relationship and what he stood for in relationship to the Old and New Testament, as well as some of the key factors that are mentioned there regarding eligibility, for entering heaven, the 144,000, things of this nature. I'm going to hopefully clear up some things for everybody as best we can in a relatively short period of time. Okay.
All right, it's an interesting topic. First of all, I want to say these sessions are not about me, even though I'm the one who's presenting the information. They're about you, each one of you, all of you. That's why we're taking time to do this. There's a lot of confusion in this culture, worldwide for that matter, concerning messages that are housed in various religious books, the Bible being the one we're really talking about right now. But people need to understand that the Bible isn't really everything they think it is. And for those of you who saw the first communication, hear this coming out of my mouth, you might not expect to hear this. The fact is, the word Bible comes from an old Greek term, biblios, which simply means books or book. So a bibliography is a book about a person's life. In this case, Bible, biblios, Bible, it's a book about events that happen. Now, the term Holy Bible, Holy Book. Many people call it the good book. But you have to understand that what you have in the Bible, and I know this won't agree with a lot of people, and that's all right. I'm not trying to agree with people or disagree. Offering what's there. The Bible is not the Word of God. It's a representation of some facets of God. It's a representation of some facets of humanity. There are numerous times when I used to live down south in Florida when people would come to my door and say, well, the Bible is the Word of God, and every word that proceedeth from the mouth of God is in the Bible. Well, to which I would have to answer, no, it isn't, and no, every word in there didn't come from God. And of course, I'd get these unhappy looks, and people would turn and walk away. At least I didn't have to listen to their spiels for an hour. The fact is, the Bible is about 1/3 the relationship of people to people, whether it's various families to or against one another, or members of a family or a tribe to or against one another, or whether it's nation against nation or nation with nation. About 1/3 of the Bible is something a little further away, something extraterrestrial, especially in the Old Testament, and yes, in the New Testament too. There is a lot of both metaphysics and extraterrestrial influence. The Bible is sopping and dripping with both of that. Now, most Christian preachers don't want to even deal with any of that, and they'll say, oh, no, it's not. The fact is, it is. You can't open the page of the covers of the Bible without smelling the metaphysics and the extraterrestrial. And the two do kind of go hand in hand. And there's about 1/3 of the Bible that is truly divine, truly the inspiration and love and strength of God and the guidance of God with individuals and with nations. But to say that every word in the Bible was spewed out of the mouth of God, well, if that was the case, the Bible you have would not be in English. It would not be in Latin. It would not be in Greek. It would be in ancient Hebrew, maybe even up to Aramaic, more modern Hebrew for that time, 2,000 years ago. But even then, it wouldn't really be the Word of God. God is too simple and too wonderful to be put between the covers of a book. There's no owner manual to God. There's no user manual to God. As far as the Bible being accurate on every detail, it is not. I know no one wants to hear that either. The difference between the Old Testament and New Testament, if you look at the ancient Old Testament, pre-Abraham, those are stories that have been handed down since thousands of years before from the Middle East, from Samaria, or what they used to call ancient Sumer, based on tablets of the same basic type of storyline that you have recorded in the ancient Old Testament. When you get to Abraham and come up from that, you're dealing with a little more modern Old Testament. But understand, what you have in your Old Testament is not the true Old Testament. The real Old Testament is composed of basically three writings: the Torah, the Talmud, and something that didn't make it into the Bible, the mystery teachings, or Kabbalah, the Zohar as it's also called. Then you have the New Testament, based on my life 2,000 years ago, and my crucifixion and resurrection, and then those who came to take the message and teach it to the world afterwards. There is, according to history, I know there are people who, if you're arguing faith, they're going to go for faith no matter what history, no matter what actually happened. I understand that. There's a central human issue here, and it's fear. It says, if I'm going to believe something, I better believe what Reverend so-and-so says, because I'm afraid to think for myself, because if I think for myself, if I believe the history books, I might end up going to hell, or at least not have an afterlife. That kind of fear is potent. It's one of the most powerful fears that exists. And like all fear, is false evidence appearing real, F-E-A-R. People, each and every, and here we go again, each and every one of you is literally the complete totality of God incarnated in a form you can share, in a form you can manifest. There is no better and more simple and more beautiful message, and there is no truer salvation than that in itself. That is the heart of salvation. It's everything I came to teach 2,000 years ago, 3,000 years plus before that, and even further back before that in ancient Egypt. I've been around a while. There's so much in a half an hour, there's no way. But
We're going to have many of these, so
that's all right. It needs to be understood. I never made statements about the 144,000. I did refer to the elect. You have to understand, the elect are those who do the electing, those who do the choosing. It really didn't have anything to do with people. God said, okay, that's out of all of the world's population, that 144,000, and they're the ones I choose most. No. God doesn't play favorites.
I always took it as a symbolic takeoff of the 12 tribes of Israel. 12
That's
times
right.
12 being 144.
That's right.
Maybe if you could extrapolate on that a little bit.
Sure. Because that dates back to the Anunnaki influence on Earth and the Council of Nine. That's extraterrestrial. Now, does that mean God didn't have anything to do with it? Of course not. God did it through them. Remember, we're all God.
Which is what now exactly? Are you saying that the Anunnaki help put these families into some kind of power?
Yes.
Into some kind of elitism?
Yes.
And
in fact, you see it today in what they call the Zionist control. Actually, it's not Zionist. It's Zionists.
With a P.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're a reptilian bloodline that is now reptilian human. If you want to control a world, either you put a lot of money and time and effort on military might, or you get them to do it for you.
Right. So would it be a fair assumption to say that the Israelites, as we came to know them biblically, did not exist before the Anunnaki pulled together various different family lines to put in power?
Basically, yeah. And we're really simplifying it, but yes, that's a good way to put it.
Yeah.
Again, if you go back to the ancient stories, the pre-Abraham stories.
So they were, what I'm trying to establish is that the Israelites, they weren't a race or an exact group of people so much as they were people from the Middle East, loosely, that were called together in a religious sense. And then as time went on, and the families, intermarried and such, then they might have, started to grow some various, characteristics among themselves, like a formal race. But they really were, just, people from that area of the world that were brought together by the Anunnaki, who, for people who have no idea who the Anunnaki are, let's give just a real couple minute primer on them and how they established the Sumerian language and had an influence on not just the Egyptians but probably on a land that people are starting to research more and more today, known as Atlantis. Right?
True.
Okay.
True. So, the Anunnaki are an extraterrestrial race, a basically reptilian race with a tremendous military. They were part of a council that has been called the Council of Nine, or the Council, that has overseen development here on Earth. Mm-hmm. Let me explain something to you, and I think I hinted at this in the previous session. Humanity is a hodgepodge of a lot of different experiments put together on one world. Your human destiny has been violated more times than a French hooker. There is a very shaky peace treaty between various cultures who feel they have valid claim to Earth and to its humanity. Of course, no one can own humanity, but tell them that. And right now, there is a peace treaty, a shaky one, between cultures who would like to come here and make good on that claim that they feel that they have. And other cultures that are saying, if you do, it's going to be a shooting war. And so everybody is keeping supposedly hands up.
The Mexican standoff.
Absolutely. The Anunnaki had a bloodline that they had picked out for some time, that they wanted to guide it along the terms that they wanted to see this world develop to. And there are other cultures and systems that have bloodlines here too. But they're the ones who were largely responsible for the Hebrew development in the Middle East. So again, I want to get back to this idea of 144,000.
Certainly.
That is an extraterrestrial concept. It is not a divine concept. It is not of God. It's of the little g gods, if you want to call them that. I don't even want to call them that.
Yeah.
Extraterrestrial, space beings. I get kind of sick to my stomach when I hear people call them our space brothers. like their goodness and light.
Mm.
Some of them are. Some of them are
Well, so much of the Bible, as you said before earlier in this same tape, is reference stories that are heavily influenced, if not directed, by the likes of the Anunnaki, masquerading as the God Almighty, and maybe we could mention a few of these stories briefly. Let's start with Sodom and Gomorrah. That's one of my favorites. That is something that was started by the Anunnaki, and the Anunnaki are clearly in. Let me also preface it by saying the Anunnaki are clearly in the Old Testament. They're talked about as being the Watchers, and they're talked about as being the ones that came down from the heavens and had their way with women.
The sons of gods had their looked upon the daughters of men, found them fair.
They come from a world in the Bible. It's called Wormwood. In modern times, we call their world, and I believe they even know of it as something similar to the name Nibiru, which is a very large asteroid of a planet. It's not even completely round. It's likened to be somewhat oblong, and it hurtles through space on a very wide elliptical trajectory between our solar system and allegedly our best information is there's actually a second star out there, a dark star, that it revolves around beside our star. But it comes through our solar system, and it comes fairly close to Earth. What is it, roughly every, I think, 2,600 years?
More like 3,600.
Okay, 3,600, okay. And during those times in our Earth's history, many times we've had cataclysms because of the gravitational pull, some of the global flooding that have been reported throughout various cultures have been attributed to that situation, as well as when it's coming by close, it affords them a lot of extra time and easy space to go back and forth. And when cataclysms and things are happening here, because of the proximity, then they can exercise some of their various tactics at that time that they'd like. In terms of what are they doing here beside playing with our genetics, and they're not the only ones, as Bob said. I've heard it explained that there are 13 other main alien races that have a strong genetic input to our human race, and then if you extrapolate that out, it's actually more like over 60 total. Just not strong influence, but as many as 60 different alien races that have had input into our growth. Now, I just want to say before we get back to Bob's explaining real quick, the fact that it's fairly well known and accepted by ancient alien researchers that the Anunnaki, what they were doing here beside playing God, was they were mining our world for gold. Was one of their big predominant things, and they were using slave labor. They were using us as slave labor, and they have a lot of a need for gold in their world. They used gold, and at that time as well here, there was an artificial firmament that was created to help stabilize the atmosphere, and as well as you put a bunch of itemized gold up into the atmosphere, and you have an incredible ability for communication devices and all other devices to work, as gold is a most excellent conductor. And we actually have, not to get off on a tangent, but we have a similar going on right now with the government spraying chemtrails to kind of tie it into modern times. But with that, I'll turn it back over to you to carry on.
Another thing with gold in your atmosphere, you have an excellent way to receive magnetic current to help bolster protection against rays like cosmic rays coming in and doing damage too. So, for whatever their rationale, they definitely were using gold that they were getting from here. Stories like Sodom and Gomorrah, that really had very little to do with sin. And people don't want to hear that, I'm sure. It had more to do with the fact that those cities were repositories for alien technology and alien weapon as well. They weren't destroyed from natural forces. They were destroyed by blasts coming from above the sky.
Nuclear in nature, probably, and that's
probable.
what caused Lot's wife to turn into a pillar of salt and people to be entombed in the city. What? So to your knowledge, what was it that pissed the aliens off that caused them to?
They were pissed off at each other.
So it was a war between different factions. Had
Sure.
little to do with the Earth people living there.
Right. And humans were caught in the middle.
Yeah. Okay. So they used their own anger, their own petty war. They threw it into the Bible to be used as a cautionary tale, another way to keep us in line.
Well, basically, it was a way of saying, to us, you're objects. We made you. We can unmake you. We can do anything we want with or to you. So walk on eggshells.
Yeah.
And if you're lucky, maybe we won't be too bad to you. Again, fear.
Yes.
Being used to promote control.
Here's another good one that popped in my head. You got the Tower of Babel.
I was just about to talk about that.
All right, very good, very good.
That was a launch device. We humans turned out to be a little bit more of a problem than our progenitors, one of our sets of progenitors, anticipated. The Anunnaki didn't think we would become as overpopulated. We weren't even supposed to be reproducing at all. They would control our numbers that way.
Mm.
But because of Enki, one of the sons of the house of Anu, the ruling family of Nibiru, decided to have us be given the capacity for reproduction. And we took it seriously and began breeding like rabbits. But we were also smarter than our progenitors didn't expect us to be. We wanted a piece of the action. We wanted to go up and be where the gods lived. Now let me explain something to you. Look at our own religion, Christianity, and most other religions for that matter, and they have the teaching that God lives somewhere above the clouds,
right
up there.
Right.
Yeah, that comes back from a throwback from the little g gods who lived on space stations, mothership, or whatever you want to call it. Yes, above the clouds.
Yeah.
And some of the human prophets were taken up there to visit it.
Right.
And they reported what they saw. Now think for a minute. The God of all being, the creator of all existence, the only one true God, love, doesn't need a spaceship to come down and tell people on the ground what to do, which was called Shekinah glory, or the glory of the Lord. Doesn't need to pick people up and put a weird scroll in their mouths so that they visualize weird things, prophecies or whatever. I mean, these are descriptions of spaceships and extraterrestrial medicine, futuristic medicine, futuristic by those days, thousands of years ago. Let me try to explain something too, and that little end piece to that bit about the Tower of Babel.
Yeah.
Not only was that a launch device, but it was thrown down. The little g gods got really concerned after that and said, okay, we've got to dumb those people down.
Well, I think for my satisfaction, you're glossing over a little bit. Wasn't the Tower of Babel? It was built by humans, and that was their. They had some type of rocketry that they had worked out.
Yeah.
You know, that they were trying to actually either shoot down or gain access to some of these spaceships from this tall tower, right?
Yep. They were planning to go up there and get to heaven,
Right.
the spaceship or whatever, the mothership, however you want to put it, and be able to go up there and meet with the gods and be like the gods
Yeah.
and be with the gods.
And then that led to a very heavy, serious movement that the aliens came down and struck all the people dumbfounded in Babylon.
Yeah, it wouldn't be that hard to do, even by today's standards. It could be done through an aerosol in the air or something in the water. You could dumb people down very effectively. And unfortunately, that has been done, and it's altered our DNA even. And just now, our DNA is becoming somewhat repaired.
Well, hang on. Again, let's just to clarify. What we're talking about is in the Bible how it talks about how all of a sudden people were struck down and nobody understood each other, and as time worked out, when they could speak, that they all had different languages, and they were only able to understand each other in small groups. Do you care to enumerate probably what the time scale on this was and what it was, how they came to have all these different languages, how that worked at all?
Not really. That's just more, as I call it, water under the dam.
Okay.
Because actually we're getting off topic here.
Okay,
But
yeah.
what I want to get to is, all I'm trying to show you is that the Bible is not exactly what you think it is.
Yeah.
If you come to the New Testament, I'm having to decide how I want to say this. My life then is similar to my life now. Heaven, real heaven, needed a being here who was partly extraterrestrial, which I was and am. It was partly human, which I was and am, and partly divine, which I was and am.
And to clarify, you were, for people who don't know,
Yeshua ben David, what you call Jesus today. I've known this about me almost all my life in this lifetime. I fought with myself about it because you would think, oh, who wouldn't want to be Jesus? The truth is, I didn't want to be. But I finally stopped fighting and said, okay, this is what it is. Let me do what I can with this to make a difference for the better. And I have seen miracles happen, which are our birthright. Miracles are our birthright. We get into that a whole different time. That's for a whole different evening session. What I want to make clear to you is that the New Testament is the guarantee, the fulfillment of promise. In some ways, it is the fulfillment of the Old Testament. But most importantly, it's an effort by the Creator of all being to let you know and remind you of your worth. That Creator was willing to come to you in the form that I was back then, willing to live and willing to die and be resurrected because you're worth it. You see, throughout history, you've been told you're not worth much. You've been controlled by fear, you've been controlled by economics, you've been controlled by various forms of slavery. Fear is a big form. Economics is another big form of slavery. There are many forms of it. Government, if you want to put it that way, if it's not truly elected by the people and representative of the people in a genuine democracy and not a republic. By the way, speaking of that, and yes, I'm going off topic for a moment. In today's technology worldwide, you have the capacity to be a planetary democracy. There's no reason in the world you can't sit in the comfort of your home with your tablets or smartphone, type in either a yes or no or whatever selection process.
Yeah, we'd have to be able to trust the government to truly represent what we're typing in. I mean, there's nothing easier to usurp than technology these days.
Oh.
So a lot of trust would have to be,
The trust would have to be earned. We don't have that right now.
No.
But I'm simply saying you have the capacity.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
To really make this a worldwide democracy, the likes of which you have never had.
Well, we have the capacity to be catapulted into an incredible future if we're able to get past, a lot of petty crap and petty tyrants in the mix.
You're heading into a really horrific future right now, and you're worthy of better. That's why I was crucified 2,000 years ago, to remind you that you were worth it. I wouldn't have gone through something like that if you weren't worth it. It was to remind you of your value and your worth to the Creator of all being.
Mm-hmm.
And that you could see one another likewise. If you literally could see each other as God incarnated, just even momentarily, it could change the world.
And also how you've told me before, well, I'll say it, how you've said that as the God representation in the flesh, focalized in the flesh, coming here to establish this world and that time forward for humanity.
Absolutely, and to help the human race to have the option of a choice, and again, it's your choice, and it can't be forced on you. But if you choose this in the future, you could become healers, teachers, and messiahs of the entire multiverse. That's why Earth is the nexus for the change the way it is. There's change that's starting here, and it's going to be rippling out for billions of years out into the multiverse at various locations. Things aren't going to be the same, ever, no matter what you do. But you can make them so much better if you make choices that allow you to become all you can be. What is your birthright to be, and you'll be happier for it. Let's get back to this concept of the 144,000 for a moment.
Sure.
There are a lot of people who feel that, well, certain individuals and certain bloodlines would be first in heaven and other people would be the servants to them in heaven. Bullshit.
Yeah.
Now, yeah, I know I cussed. I did 2,000 years ago.